Believe it or not, this isn't fiction. The family that turned their backs on me when I was homeless showed up at my doorstep with suitcases. Without blinking, they declared, "This house belongs to us." They wanted to rip away the one thing I'd fought to protect. Anger burned through me, but with it came a steely resolve. I wouldn't let them destroy my fortress. My name is Rachel. I am 30. I run a small graphic design business and own a cozy cottage inherited from my grandmother. 5 years ago, my family, Mom Sarah, Dad John, and brother Michael abandoned me when I was on the streets. I swore I'd never let them control me again. My life started fresh, and everything was perfect until they returned. My cottage sits in a small town an hour from Philadelphia. It's an old house with creaky wooden floors and big windows that let in soft morning light. The garden out back is a memory of my grandmother Ellen, who taught me to love the earth. Every morning, I sit on the porch with a mug of coffee, breathing in the scent of fresh beans, listening to birds chirp, and checking orders for Elevation Designs, my graphic design studio. In 5 years, I turned it into a small company with 3 employees working out of a converted garage next to the house. We create logos, websites, and branding for local cafes, bakeries, and shops. Evenings, I tend the garden, planting roses, lavender, and daisies, just as Ellen taught me. The smell of soil and flowers soothes me, bringing back summer days when I was a kid, and she showed me how to hold a trowel. "Rachel," she'd say, her voice warm as sunlight, "your home is your fortress. No one has the right to take it." I was proud of what I'd built. The house was debt-free, the business was thriving, and my circle of friends brought warmth. My neighbor Patrick, who owns the local bookstore, became a close friend. We'd sit in his cafe, smelling old books and cinnamon, talking about novels and my latest projects. Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly neighbor, brought homemade muffins and shared stories about the town. For the first time, I felt at home, surrounded by peace and purpose. The cottage was my sanctuary. I updated it, painted the walls in warm tones, swapped old fixtures for modern ones, but kept the wooden beams Ellen loved. The garden bloomed under my care. I learned to tend the roses she'd planted for decades. Every morning, looking at the flower beds, I felt her presence, a strength that helped me endure. But that peace was fragile as glass. I often recalled how my journey began, and those memories were bitter. I grew up in a Philadelphia suburb, in a neat house with a small yard of just grass and a couple of apple trees. On the surface, we were a normal family. Dad John, a manager, always in crisp suits with a briefcase like it was part of him. Mom Sarah, a nurse, who kept the house spotless despite long hospital shifts, like something out of a magazine. And Michael, my brother, 3 years older, their hope, their pride, their star. From childhood, I felt the difference in how our parents treated us. His average grades earned praise. My excellent ones were expected. When Michael got into a state university with a small scholarship, our parents threw a huge party, inviting neighbors, relatives, even Dad's colleagues. They gave him a car, spending a chunk of money. I saw Mom beam, bragging about him to guests, while John clapped him on the shoulder like he was already president. But at 15, I was told, if you want to study further, earn it yourself. At 16, I worked 20 hours a week at a local cafe, serving coffee, sandwiches, and milkshakes. The smell of burnt toast and grease clung to my clothes, but I was proud of every dollar I saved for college. I'd wake at 5 a.m. to make my shift before school, then do homework until midnight. My parents didn't notice. "It's your responsibility," Dad would say, not looking up from his magazine. Mom sometimes frowned at my tired eyes but quickly changed the subject to Michael. He applied for a scholarship. Can you believe it? I'd nod, hiding the resentment growing inside like a weed. The only bright spot was my grandmother Ellen, Mom's mother. She lived an hour away in a cozy cottage with a garden that felt like a fairy tale. Every summer, I spent weeks with her while Michael went to sports camps paid for by our parents. Ellen taught me to care for flowers, roses, daisies, lavender. Her work-worn hands, etched with decades of labor, gently guided mine as we worked in the garden. Rachel, she'd say, her blue eyes shining despite her age, your worth depends only on you. Always have your own home. Ellen raised 3 kids nearly alone after my grandfather died when Mom was 11. She worked as a seamstress, sewing dresses and suits to provide for them. Her strength and independence were my beacon, especially when I felt invisible at home. My parents pushed me to become a nurse like Mom. It's a reliable career, Rachel, Mom would say, her voice firm. You'll always have work. But I didn't want to be a nurse. In high school, I discovered graphic design. My teacher, Ms. Carter, saw my knack for composition and color and taught me digital design programs. I spent hours after school creating posters and logos, lost in a world of lines and hues. When I won a regional design contest, I thought my parents would be proud. But John just grunted, art's for people who can afford to fail. Mom nodded, adding, medicine is stability. Their words cut like a knife, but I didn't give up. In my senior year, when it was time to apply to colleges, I chose a design program at a local college and a few affordable state universities. When acceptance letters arrived, I was over the moon. But my parents refused to even discuss helping with tuition unless I picked nursing or business. We don't waste money on nonsense, Dad said at dinner, his voice cold as winter wind. Mom stared at her plate, silent. Michael, home for the weekend from college, smirked. Maybe listen to them, Rachel. Not everyone's cut out for success. I went to my room, clenched my fists, and vowed I'd do it myself. I graduated high school with high grades and moved into a cramped apartment with 2 roommates I found through an ad. I worked 30 hours a week at a cafe, carrying trays of coffee and burgers, while attending college. The smell of fryer grease soaked into my clothes, but I kept my GPA up. Ellen called every week, her voice like a warm blanket. You'll make it, Rachel. You're stronger than you think. Her support kept me going when I was ready to break. After 2 years of college, I transferred to a state university to finish my graphic design degree. I barely spoke to my parents, just rare holiday calls where John asked about my income, and Sarah slapped me at 20, whispering for food. Michael, now working at a financial firm, was their star. At family dinners, Mom bragged Michael got a promotion, saving for a downtown apartment. I sat quietly, their words pressing on me like a heavy stone. When I graduated at 22, I hadn't lived at home for 4 years. Only Ellen came to my graduation, despite her age and aching joints. Her smile as I walked across the stage was brighter than any praise. After, I moved to Philadelphia for better opportunities. The design scene was growing, and I landed an internship at an agency. The night before I left, I had dinner with Ellen. I'm scared, I admitted, sitting on her porch with a slice of pie. What if they're right, and I fail? She took my hand, her eyes gleaming. The only failure is living someone else's dream. Rachel, follow your heart. Those words became my compass. I left, determined to prove I could succeed. It all started with a letter. On Tuesday morning, I opened my email and saw a name that froze me, Michael, my brother. 5 years of silence, no calls, no texts, even when I was homeless. And now, dear Rachel, it's been a while. Stumbled across your studio's website. Impressive. Mom and Dad are worried you're out of touch. Let's meet. I read it 3 times, the bitter taste of coffee in my mouth growing sharper. Not a word about ignoring my pleas for help when I was at rock bottom. No hint of an apology for dismissing my cries for aid. Just fake warmth that gave me chills. I showed the email to Patrick, my friend who owns the local bookstore. We sat in his cafe, surrounded by the smell of cinnamon and fresh espresso bookshelves creating a cozy nook, but my heart raced. Sounds like you want something, Patrick said, frowning. People don't reach out after 5 years for no reason. I nodded, a cold knot of anxiety forming in my chest. Why now? I remembered 5 years ago, when the recession killed my job. I was on the edge. My savings were gone. My landlord threatened eviction. I called home, choking back tears, begging for a little money to cover rent. I'll pay it back, I pleaded. Sarah passed the phone to John. Rachel, we told you design was a waste of time. We're paying for Michael's school. No money, he said, his voice colder than ice. I knew it was a lie. There was always money for Michael. I decided not to reply, but the anxiety didn't fade. The next day, I went to town for groceries. At the store, I ran into Mrs. Jenkins, my neighbor, who was watering her roses when I pulled up. Rachel, I saw your brother in town. He introduced himself, she said, adjusting her glasses. He was talking to some guy, asking about local real estate prices, said it was for a family matter. My fingers tightened. A family matter? They weren't just looking to reconnect. They wanted something. Anxiety turned to suspicion, and I knew something was brewing, and it wasn't good. The anxiety sparked by Michael's letter wouldn't let go. His words impressive, unless meat rang hollow like a cheap tune. 5 years ago, when I was broke, he ignored every message I sent. And now he suddenly remembered me? I sat in my cottage, staring at the laptop screen where his emails still glowed. The coffee in my mug had gone cold, leaving a bitter aftertaste. I stepped out to the garden to clear my head. The lavender I planted last summer swayed in the breeze, reminding me of Ellen. She always said, "Rachel, trust your heart. If something feels off, it is." My gut screamed that Michael and my parents were up to something. The next day, I drove to Patrick's bookstore. The smell of old books and fresh espresso usually calmed me, but not today. I told him about the letter and Mrs. Jenkins' comment about Michael asking around about real estate prices. He was talking to some guy in town, I said, fidgeting with a napkin. Mentioned a family matter. Patrick leaned back in his chair, his dark eyes studying my face. "Rachel, are you sure they just want to reconnect? This feels like something bigger." His words hit home. The cottage, inherited from Ellen, was my lifeline, and it seemed like they had plans for it. I poured everything into that house, savings, effort, my soul. My thoughts drifted back to those years when my family made it clear I was nothing to them. 5 years ago, the recession wiped out my job at a design agency. Desperate, I drove to my parents' house. Rain poured, my car stuffed with belongings. Dad opened the door, looked at me like a stranger. "You chose your path. Deal with it," he said. Mom muttered, "We have a meeting tomorrow, bad timing." They slammed the door. I sat in my car outside their house, soaked and shivering, hoping they'd change their minds. They didn't come out. For a week, I lived in my car, showered at gym, and job hunted on library computers. Michael didn't answer a single text. I felt utterly alone. But Ellen, my grandmother, was my beacon. Every summer, I stayed at her cottage, tending her garden. "Rachel," she'd say, her weathered hands guiding mine as we planted daisies, "never let others define your worth." Her strength inspired me, especially when I was invisible at home. Now her cottage was mine, and the suspicion that my family wanted to take it lit a fire in me. 3 days later, Sarah, my mom, called. "Rachel, honey, we've missed you," she said, her voice sweeter than syrup. "We want to visit, talk about family." I gripped the phone, anger boiling inside. Family? After it, they abandoned me? I remembered fighting for my dream in my teens. My parents pushed me to be a nurse. Now this call. "Come over," I said coldly, determined to uncover their motives. But inside, everything screamed, "This isn't good." And it was just the beginning. A week later, I heard a car outside. From the window, I saw my parents' black sedan. Sarah, John, and Michael stepped out, dragging suitcases like they'd already decided to move in. I opened the door, a lump in my throat. Sarah smiled like nothing was wrong. Rachel, we've decided to stay with you. Families should be together. Dad stepped forward, his gaze cold as steel. This house is too big for just you, it's for the family. I froze. Michael, standing behind them, smirked. You don't mind, do you, sis? It's family property. My house. My fortress. The one thing I'd shielded from the world. They wanted to snatch like they had a right. I remembered working at 16 in a cafe to save for college. My parents never praised me. Ellen was the only one who believed in me. Now her house was mine, and I wasn't giving it up. Anger turned to resolve. I didn't yell or argue. I just picked up my phone and dialed 3 digits. Leave, or I'm calling the police, I said, locking eyes with John. His face darkened, Mom gasped, and Michael stepped closer. Seriously, we're family. But I knew this wasn't family. This was a threat. They exchanged glances. Sarah, with a theatrical sigh, said, Fine, Rachel, we'll go, but this isn't over. They drove off, but I felt it was the calm before the storm. That evening, I sat on the porch, staring at the stars. The scent of lavender from the garden calmed me, but my heart raced. I remembered Ellen's funeral 5 years ago. Sarah and John were cold, but when the will was read, their masks slipped. Ellen left me the cottage and her savings, them only small keepsakes. Sarah sobbed, Mom always loved you more, even though you barely visited. I didn't explain I couldn't afford to visit, they knew. Now their return reeked of trouble. I knew they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted, but I didn't yet know how far they'd go. The next day, I got a letter from a lawyer. Michael had filed a lawsuit claiming Ellen's will was written under my influence. They wanted to strip me of my right to the cottage. I sat at the kitchen table, clutching the paper until my fingers went numb. This wasn't just greedy, it was betrayal, cold and calculated, like a knife in the back. I called Patrick, my friend, and we met at his cafe, where it smelled of old paper, fresh coffee, and cinnamon. I showed him the lawyer's letter, my hands shaking. Rachel, this is serious, he said, his dark eyes darkening with concern. They wanted to break you, and now they want the house. Unbelievable. His words stung, but he was right. I'll fight, I told him, feeling anger turn to resolve, like steel forged in fire. He nodded. You're not alone, we'll find a way. I went home, but sleep wouldn't come. I listened to every creak outside, imagining someone sneaking toward my cottage. In the morning, I found a note slipped into my mailbox, Give up the house, or you'll regret it. No signature, but the handwriting was Michael's sharp, slanted right, like in his old-school notebooks I'd found in our childhood room. My palms sweated, fear ran down my spine like a cold wave, but I clenched my teeth. This wasn't just a lawsuit, it was blatant, ruthless blackmail. I photographed the note and sent it to Patrick. This is evidence, he said over the phone, his voice shaking with anger. But we need more. I decided to install a camera at the entrance, hidden behind a lavender pot on the porch. If they came back, I'd be ready. But I didn't yet know how far they'd go. The note would give up the house, or you'll regret it, sat on my kitchen table. Its sharp handwriting, unmistakably Michael's, burning a hole in my heart. I was in my cottage, surrounded by familiar comfort. Wooden floors creaked, soft light poured through windows, and the scent of lavender from the garden I'd restored in Ellen's memory drifted in. But that comfort couldn't silence the fear rising like a cold wave. 5 years ago, my family, Sarah, John, and Michael ditched me when I was at rock bottom. Now they were back to take the cottage Ellen left me to ensure I'd always have a foundation. Their lawsuit, claiming the will was under my influence, was the first blow. The note was the second. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was blackmail, bold and merciless. I decided to act. I called Mr. Clark, Ellen's lawyer, an older man with kind eyes and a habit of adjusting his glasses when discussing serious matters. "Rachel, your grandmother's will is ironclad," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But Michael's lawsuit could drag things out. We need proof he's acting dishonestly." I asked him to review all documents tied to the will. "If they forged anything, we'll find it," he added. I thanked him and hung up, but fear lingered. The threatening note sat before me, its words "or you'll regret it" echoing in my mind. I remembered fighting for my dream in my youth. The next day, I got another letter, not from the lawyer, but from Michael. It included a copy of a document resembling Ellen's will, but the signature looked off, not like the original. He wrote, "We found another will. The house should be split among us all." My palms sweated, my heart pounded. It was a forgery. Ellen had told me in the hospital before she passed, "The house is yours, Rachel. You deserve it." But this document looked scarily convincing. I called Mr. Clark, my voice trembling. "It's a fake, but it looks real." He replied calmly, "We'll check it, Rachel. If it's a forgery, they'll regret it." I sat in the garden, staring at the roses I planted for Ellen. Their sweet scent mixed with the bitter sting of betrayal. My family didn't just want my house, they were willing to forge documents to take it. Fear turned to resolve. I wouldn't let them win, but I didn't yet know how far they'd go. The cottage no longer felt safe. The wooden floors creaked, evening light filtered through windows, but the lavender scent from the garden I'd restored for Ellen couldn't ease the fear gripping my throat. Michael's letter with the forged will, claiming the cottage should be divided, lay on the table. Ellen's signature was fake. I knew her neat handwriting from letters and cards she sent me in college. This was a forgery, proof my family, Sarah, John, and Michael, was willing to do anything to steal the house Ellen left me. My fear blended with resolve. My plan to meet my family and catch them in a lie was risky, but I had no choice. I texted Michael, "Let's talk about the house, today at 5, my place." He replied instantly, "We'll be there." My hand shook as I sent the message. I asked Patrick, my bookstore friend, to be nearby and record through the window. The entrance camera was running too. If they tried to pull something, I'd be ready. I recalled how, 5 years ago, my life fell apart, how I texted Michael begging for help, but he stayed silent, like I didn't exist. That loneliness still burned like an open wound. Now they were back to take the cottage. At 5, their black sedan pulled up. Sarah, John, and Michael stepped out, no suitcases, but their faces were tense. Sarah smiled, but her eyes were cold. "Rachel, we want to settle this." Dad stayed silent, his gaze heavy as lead. Michael held a folder. "We've got a solution. Sign this, and we'll split the house fairly." I took the papers, heart pounding. It was an agreement to divide the property with another forged signature of Ellen's. "You think I'll buy this lie?" I asked, staring at Michael. His smirk faded. "Don't make this hard, Rachel. We'll win." I heard a rustle outside. Patrick was filming through the window. The entrance camera was rolling too. "You're wrong," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "This is my house, and I'll prove you're lying." Their faces paled. Sarah quickly said, "We just want fairness." I shook my head. "Get out." They left, but I knew it wasn't over. That night, I reviewed the camera footage. It showed Michael slipping a second note into the mailbox. His face was blurry, but his figure and movements were unmistakable. I sent the footage to Mr. Clark. "This is evidence," he said. "The forgery investigation is underway. If it's confirmed, we'll sue them." I sat in the living room, looking at old photos of Ellen in a wooden box. In one, she smiled, standing in the garden with a basket of daisies. "You're strong, Rachel," her voice echoed in my memory. I wouldn't give up. The camera footage of Michael slipping a threatening note, "Last chance, give up the house, or it'll get worse," into my mailbox played in my head like a broken record. I sat in my cottage living room, surrounded by the comfort I'd built, creaky wooden floors, soft light through windows, and the lavender scent from the garden I'd restored for Ellen drifting in. But that cover couldn't quiet the fear mixed with fury. My family, Sarah, John, and Michael, didn't just want to take Ellen's cottage left to me so I'd always have roots. They forged a will, claiming it split the house among us all, and blackmailed me with notes. I sent the footage to Mr. Clark, my lawyer. "This is evidence, Rachel," he said over the phone, his voice firm. "The forgery is confirmed. We're suing them." I nodded, though he couldn't see, feeling resolve hardened to steel. My trap, the meeting with my family, recorded by Patrick through the window, worked. But I knew they wouldn't give up. The next day, Mr. Clark called. "Rachel, the investigation's done," he said, adjusting his glasses when I met him at his office, which smelled of old paper and leather. "The signature's fake, and we traced it. Michael hired a local lawyer, Mr. Wilson, to forge it. We have proof." My fists clenched, anger boiling like lava. They didn't just blackmail, they forged Ellen's will. My grandmother, whose voice still rang in my head, "Your home is your strength." I met Patrick at his bookstore. The smell of old books and coffee usually soothed me, but not today. I told him about Clark's call. "They forged the will," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "And that's not all. Mrs. Jenkins saw Michael with some guy talking about selling the house." Patrick frowned. "Rachel, they won't stop, but you've got evidence. Time to end this." I nodded. We reviewed the camera footage, Michael slipping. The note was clear. Patrick recorded our meeting, where they pushed the forged agreement. "This'll hold up in court," he said. I felt resolve temper me like steel and fire. Exposing the forged will was like a lightning strike. Mr. Clark told me the police questioned Michael, Sarah, and John. The investigation confirmed Ellen's signature on their will was fake. Michael hired Mr. Wilson to fabricate it, and Sarah and John knew but stayed silent, hoping for a cut from selling the cottage. Their plan was simple: challenge my right, sell the house, and split the cash. At the questioning, Michael snapped, "Rachel doesn't deserve that house. She's always been selfish." His words cut like a knife, but I remembered Ellen. "Your home is your strength. She left me the cottage so I'd never rely on those who betray me." The court dismissed their lawsuit, declared the forged will invalid, and Michael faced a fine for forgery and blackmail. Sarah and John called, begging me not to ruin the family, but I was done listening. I changed my number and installed a new lock. A month later, Sarah sent a letter reel in an envelope, in her neat handwriting. I sat on the porch, holding it, my heart tightening. The lavender scent from the garden I restored for Ellen calmed me, but not entirely. Sarah wrote, "Rachel, we messed up. We want to start over. You're our daughter." She asked to meet, said Michael had rethought his actions. I read it 3 times, wrestling with anger and a faint spark of hope. Could they have changed? I showed the letter to Patrick at his bookstore, where it smelled of old books and coffee. "Rachel, it's a trick," he said, frowning. "They've manipulated you before." I nodded, but doubts gnawed. I decided to meet them, but on my terms in a cafe, neutral ground. On Saturday, Sarah and John sat at a cafe table, where it smelled of fresh pastries and espresso. Sarah smiled, but her eyes were cold. John looked tired, his face drawn. Michael wasn't there. "He couldn't come," Sarah said, fidgeting with the napkin. "Rachel, we were wrong," she began, her voice shaky but rehearsed. "We want to fix things." John nodded. "We shouldn't have done that." Their words sounded sincere, but I caught Sarah glancing at John when I asked about the forgery. "It was a mistake," she said quickly. I knew that tone, the same one from 5 years ago when they shut the door on me. "Enough lies," I said, standing. "If you want to fix things, start with the truth." I left feeling a weight lift. That was their last manipulation. A week later, Mr. Clark shared a new tryst. Michael tried to sell the cottage before the trial, using forged documents. His business had collapsed, he was drowning in debt, and the cottage was his way out. Sarah and John backed him. That news crushed me. They didn't just betray me, they wanted to ruin my life for their debts. I sat in the garden, looking at the daisies I planted with Ellen. Their scent recalled her words, "You're strong, Rachel." I won, but the cost was high. I lost my family for good. My cottage became my quiet haven again. Elevation Designs grew. I hired another designer, and we took on clients beyond town. Patrick became my rock. Evenings, we sat on the porch, talking books and dreams. "You did it, Rachel," he said one night, gazing at the stars. I smiled, warmth filling my chest. 5 years ago, I was a girl sleeping in a car, rejected by family. Now I had a home, a business, a life I built. How far can family go for money? Mine chose betrayal, forgery, blackmail. I won, but lost them forever. What would you do if your family tried to destroy everything you built? That's the end of today's story. Thanks so much for sticking around. If you're not subscribed yet, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you'll always catch the latest stories. Share your thoughts in the comments. I love reading what you think. And if you'd like more, there's a full playlist waiting in the description section of this video. New real stories are coming soon, and I'd love to share them with you. And I hopefully see you next time.